But of course, Jordan is not going to capture it immediately because that would be too easy for white.
Yeah, so this pawn, even though white is lacking some protection, if the rook captures the pawn, relying on the queen's defense of the rook, then Hikaru has the knight moving to attack the queen while also opening up an attack on the rook. And
Mhm.
in these trades, white ends up being up a rook in trade for a knight. So instead, after the capture between the pawns, Van Foreest decides not to capture the forbidden fruit or pawn in this case. He doesn't want the juice nor the juicer.
Which
And
is
he instead
that's
goes
surprising.
for knight to f5. Just trying to make a trade with Hikaru's knight.
Or maybe it's the same idea to provoke another weakness with g4.
Yeah, I, I'm sure Hikaru would consider g4 if he had the option, but I guess moving the knight back to then go g4 and try to kick the knight out, it feels a bit too much. But on the other hand, oh no, that was me just moving around. Did
No, no,
Hikaru play knight
Jordan is
f1?
still thinking, yeah.
Okay, yeah, my bad.
He still cannot, yeah, he still cannot take the pawn.
Oh, yeah, Hikaru did play knight f1.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
Hikaru
thought
did
that
play
was
that.
just me moving the pieces around.
Oh, but Jordan did take on c4.
And now he takes. Okay, this just got super tense. The rook captures on c4. That rook is defended by the queen. But after knight to c5 by Hikaru, getting the exclamation point, it opens up an attack from the queen on the black rook.
He sacrificed the
Uh,
queen.
and then the rook captures the knight. Now there's an attack on white's queen. Hikaru goes for the trade of queens, but instead of recapturing, now Jorden goes for rook takes c1, getting another exclamation point from chess.com. And this means that Hikaru manages to keep his queen, but in the situation that arises, black has a pawn, a knight, and a rook in trade for the queen. Very
Mhm.
exciting play here from both players.
Yeah, I'm only surprised with Jordan allowing a trade of the rooks. Is not keeping both rooks and occupying C file better for black here?
Um, I
Just
don't
surprised
know.
with this last move, rook to C8. Because it just feels like if he retreated the rook, he could
Well,
have kept them both.
if he retreats, then maybe White's rook will be able to create some threats later
That would
on.
be one.
So after rook c8, Jordan feels that he's happy to make this trade because then also he gets to have his rook pointing in towards the white king. Instead, g3 has been played by Hikaru, and now we see that theme you were talking about, the two rooks working together along the c file. It means that they're able to threaten all of white's pieces along the rank, here going in towards the white queen. Hikaru gets away and has a double attack on black's pawns. The computers are really disliking Hikaru's position, but it does seem like Hikaru's going to be able to capture a pawn here on the next move.
Yeah, but his king in return is becoming quite weak here. G3, I'm afraid, weakened the pawn structure, weakened the king, and also tied the bishop and the knight to protecting the pawn on G3. So Jordan is immediately thinking, I don't care about the pawn on B7. I have some better ideas in mind, and he is rushing for H4 idea.
Very interesting. So if queen takes on b7, is h4 the idea? When Hikaru then pushes his pawn
Yeah,
forward, the
G4
black
activating
knight may
H4.
invade into the heart of white's position. Instead, after queen takes b7, what Jorden has done is knight to d5, just centralizing the knight, putting the knight on a square where it's protected by a pawn, and there are no white pawns in a position to chase that knight out of that amazing square. So a very well placed central knight, but at the same time, now Hikaru has a queen for a rook and a knight. Let's not forget also that at some point Hikaru may capture this bishop on d6, which is undefended, and Hikaru does go for that bishop, but it is a critical mistake. Taking the bishop has allowed the black knight to come in with a check on the white king. Why is this such a disaster? If the knight is captured, the rook will recapture, checkmate threat on the side of the board. And even though Hikaru here can attack the black king and capture one of black's rooks, because of that checkmate threat, the king
You cannot
is
defend
in
it.
dire straits in the corner of the board. So he's gonna have to find some other way of getting out from
What
this
about
check.
queen f4 check and then take the rook on c8?
Yeah, that was a variation within what we just looked at, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay, so either Hikaru needs to take this rook or he needs to go king g2. That is
but then he loses the
literally
knight on
the only
d6.
possible moves. Getting the king out means that the king is not likely to get checkmated. But as Maria just said, knight e4 opens up an attack against the white king from the rook while also having an attack on the knight from the other knight. And here, well, even this is not clear. Here,
Yeah.
Van Foreest has a rook, a knight, and a pawn in trade for a queen. But the big issue is that the white king has no pawns to protect it, which may lead to trouble.
Yeah, strangely enough, even with so many pieces traded and without the black queen, the king is still in trouble. Now Hikaru is still thinking on the move, and he is shaking his head.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
No. Mm,
Rook takes knight, king up. Those are the only options. He does opt for the king moving out of the corner, realizing that the king's positioning was quite dire, prone to some checkmating ideas. We do get this position where Hikaru has the queen in trade of a rook, knight, and pawn. Normally, like queen 10 points, rook 5 points, knight 3 points, pawn 1 point. I mean, if you just count points, then Hikaru's doing just fine. The
yeah.
problem is these two rooks are incredible working together against the white king that right now just has no safety mechanism.
Yeah, the king is now half in the center. The pawns surrounded him. The rooks are cutting it off, and the queen is helpless. She cannot help the king here and the rook as well.
Yeah, and it's just over because
Yeah.
now G5 was an unstoppable threat. If Hikaru just tried to push his pawn, trying to get a new queen, pawn to G5, the king would only have one available square, and then the rooks would work together to finish the job. Instead, Hikaru here went rook to G1. I guess that he was preparing to sacrifice. Oh no, if G5
Yeah,
now, the king is safe here because there's no check in from
yeah,
behind.
f5 and rook h2 is a checkmate that is coming, so Hikaru resigned here.
So after rook f2, king g4, Hikaru resigns an epic battle. The checkmate that could have arisen